Tanks ruled the battlefield during World War II. They were rolling fortresses, loud, unstoppable, and terrifying to face. But every predator eventually meets a hunter, and in the shadows of those steel monsters, a new kind of weapon emerged. Tank destroyers. They weren't made to hold ground or lead charges. They were made for one purpose only: to eliminate enemy armor before it had the chance to strike. They were lighter, faster, and far more surgical than traditional tanks. But despite their impact, their stories were buried in history. Until now, this is the story of the steel hunters you never learned about in school. The machines that stalked enemy tanks across deserts, forests, and frozen plains. This is the dark, forgotten legend of WWII's tank destroyers. When Germany unleashed Blitzkrieg in 1939, the world was caught unprepared. Panzer divisions tore through Europe like a blade through cloth. France's fortified lines crumbled. Britain barely escaped from Dunkirk, and the Soviet Union reeled from the onslaught. Tanks were no longer just tools of war. They were symbols of domination. The Allies needed a response, and they needed it fast. America's answer wasn't bigger tanks, it was smarter vehicles. A specialized force trained to strike at enemy armor, from distance, from ambush, from anywhere. They called it the Tank Destroyer Command, and from it came a new breed of war machine. The M10 Wolverine was the first tank destroyer to see serious action. It was fast, open-topped, and armed with a 3-inch gun capable of piercing early war German tanks. It wasn't meant to go toe-to-toe with enemy armor. It was meant to outmaneuver it. In North Africa, M10s used speed and flanking to disable Panzer III and IV units. Their crews learned to strike from cover, fire once, and vanish. But things changed when the Tiger I appeared. The M10's gun couldn't penetrate its thick frontal armor. Suddenly, the hunter became the hunted, and the Allies had to evolve again. The British took the M10 and made it lethal. They replaced the standard American gun with their high-velocity 17-pounder, one of the most feared anti-tank guns of the war. The result was the Achilles. It could take out Tigers and Panthers from long range, turning German tank crews into targets. It played a major role during D-Day and the Allied push through France. But like the M10, its open-top design left crews dangerously exposed. Shrapnel, snipers, or a well-placed grenade could end everything in seconds. Still, it was proof that with the right firepower, even the deadliest enemy armor could be brought down. Then came the Hellcat, the fastest armored vehicle of World War II. It didn't just outrun enemy tanks, it outthought them. Capable of speeds up to 55 miles per hour, the M18 Hellcat could reposition faster than anything else on the battlefield. It didn't rely on armor. It relied on movement, intelligence, and precision. Armed with a 76mm gun, it was devastating in the right hands. In the Battle of the Bulge, Hellcats from the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion destroyed more than 30 German tanks in just days. They ambushed convoys, attacked from unexpected angles, and melted into the fog. But the speed came at a cost. One hit, and a Hellcat was gone. Crews lived on reflexes, intuition, and a little luck. The Germans approached tank destroyers differently. Instead of speed, they built monsters. The Jagdpanther was one of the most feared machines of the war. Armed with a deadly 88mm gun and cloaked in sloped armor, it could destroy any Allied tank from over a mile away. And then came the Jagdtiger, the heaviest armored vehicle ever deployed in battle. Weighing 70 tons and mounting a 128mm gun, it could obliterate tanks, bunkers, and even buildings with a single shot. But these beasts were slow and often broke down. Many never reached the front. Some were destroyed by their own crews to avoid capture. They were terrifying on paper, but too massive for reality. Their legend was built more from fear than performance. The Soviets didn't care about finesse, they wanted power. Their tank destroyers, the ISU-85, ISU-100, ISU-122, and ISU-152, were less about agility and more about raw destruction. These assault guns had no turrets, just massive guns mounted on the front of sturdy hulls. The ISU-152 was nicknamed the Zveroboy, the Beast Killer. Its 152mm gun could destroy tigers, fortresses, and everything in between. Instead of ambushing, the Soviets used numbers and shock force. Dozens of assault guns rolled across open fields, shattering German armor through brute violence. They weren't subtle, they were sledgehammers, and the enemy felt every blow. Not all tank destroyers made it to war. Some were so advanced or so insane that they never left the blueprint stage. Germany's E-25 was built for ambush, low profile, fast, and deadly. Only prototypes were finished before the war ended. The Sturer Emil mounted a gigantic 128mm gun, with only 2 units ever used in combat. And then there was the American T-28 super heavy tank. Weighing nearly 100 tons, it was designed to breach the Siegfried Line. It was too big for bridges, too slow for the front, and too late for war. These were the ghosts of the battlefield, machines that could have changed everything had they arrived in time. So why did these machines disappear after the war? Why did armies abandon the tank destroyer concept? The answer is simple: war changed. Missile technology, helicopters, and jet fighters reshaped the battlefield. There was no longer room for highly specialized machines. Tanks became all-purpose, mobile, lethal, and heavily armored. Why build a separate vehicle to kill tanks when every tank could be built to do that job itself? By the 1950s, tank destroyers were already a relic, scrapped, abandoned, or forgotten. But for a few years in history, they were the kings of ambush warfare, and their stories still echo in the steel tracks left behind. Tank destroyers were never meant to be glamorous. They weren't the face of victory. They were tools, fast, fierce, and forged in urgency. They were created to face a crisis, and in doing so, they changed the very nature of tank warfare. Each design reflected a different mindset. The Americans chose speed and adaptability. The British chose firepower and precision. The Germans chose armor and terror. The Soviets chose overwhelming brutality. The M10 Wolverine, the M18 Hellcat, the Achilles, the Jagdpanther, the ISU-152. Each one had its moment, its battlefield, its legend. They weren't just machines, they were problem solvers. They were predators born from necessity and refined in the fires of desperation. And though they've vanished from modern arsenals, their influence lives on in modern tank doctrine, in ambush strategy, and in every vehicle designed to destroy armor. Tank destroyers were never meant to last, but their legacy, like the sound of a tracked vehicle in the dark, still haunts military history. And the next time you hear about the tanks that won World War II, remember the hunters in the shadows, the tank destroyers who made sure those tanks didn't win alone.